Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping ourselves in and getting into the world of intense surveillance, social engineering, and, well, a whole lot of strategic backstabbing. We're talking about Big Brother. Now, for a lot of you, it might just be that disposable summer show. It's often dismissed as trash TV.
Oh, for sure.
But we are going deep because our sources suggest this show, which is now in its third decade, holds some really profound and honestly unsettling lessons about social dynamics, about human nature, and about power.
It really is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? You look at the marketing, the silly costumes, the challenges.
Yeah, the hot dog costumes.
Exactly. And you just think it's pure popcorn entertainment. But the sources we're digging into, they frame this as a deep professional and sometimes even personal analysis of a show that truly became, and this is a quote, a distilled reflection of the society in which it exists.
And that's our mission today. We want to unpack that central paradox. How did this, silly show become such a potent mirror reflecting American society and all its deepest flaws?
And, maybe more importantly, what did those 247 live feeds reveal about the players and, about ourselves that the highly edited primetime episodes are so desperately trying to hide?
Right. To even get started, you have to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this thing. It's almost dystopian.
It is. The source material talks about the experience of being a hardcore fan, where you're just staring at this grid of 4 camera feeds, and it's often glowing with that creepy infrared night vision, just watching people sleep.
From thousands of miles away. And you're totally aware that the house is wired with something like 90 strategically placed cameras listening to every single whisper.
Yeah, and that's the hook, isn't it? This isn't just about watching the edited highlights. One author described this community of people huddled around a screen at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night watching someone sleep, because if he doesn't wake up soon, the impending revolution in the house might be called off.
That is it's so specific and so true. The extreme, unfiltered voyeurism is what fuels that hardcore fandom. It makes you feel like you're eavesdropping on your favorite characters in unprotected moments never meant for the show. It feels immediate, intimate, and frankly, pretty uncomfortable a lot of the time.
So to really get how this show became this massive, resilient thing, you have to rewind. You have to go all the way back to its completely disastrous start in the United States.
Oh, it was a catastrophe. Big Brother premiered on CBS in 2000, and by every traditional TV metric, it was a colossal failure.
But an expensive one.
A very expensive one. The critics they savaged it. TV Guide Insider wrote that the show had gotten possibly the worst reviews in television history.
Wow.
I mean, that's a high bar to clear. Another source points out that Entertainment Weekly listed it as the 3rd worst show of the year. They said no one cared who won Big Brother as long as it went away.
Ouch. So for CBS, this was quickly becoming what they called a $20 million problem. And that's referencing the huge investment they made in the rights and, building the whole infrastructure.
Right. And that initial cost is really the key to why it even got a second chance after failing so spectacularly. The original concept, which was famously inspired by Orwell's 1984, was just to put 12 strangers in a house under constant watch.
Yeah, the idea was to see them create a mini society in total isolation, which at the time felt revolutionary. It felt like something straight out of the Truman Show.
But the American version of this experiment, it was so focused on just observation and so, I guess, devoid of any real competitive stakes that it was boring.
It was so boring. I mean, one of the co-hosts was let go partway through the season. Future contestants even admitted that watching that first season was like watching paint dry. It just wasn't delivering the drama you need for primetime.
But here's where it gets interesting, the paradox. While the TV ratings are plummeting and the critics are just uniformly hostile, something totally unexpected is happening on the internet, which was still pretty new then.
Right.
Interest in the raw, unfiltered live feeds just soared. The official site, which had this clunky name, www.bigbrother2000.com, its traffic was just growing and growing. It became one of the most heavily trafficked news sites that entire summer.
And this is really the foundation of our whole deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
The audience was abandoning the polished TV show, but they were deeply, maybe even dangerously invested in the raw feed experience.
The numbers are pretty staggering. The site got over 4 million unique visitors in July alone. And we have data that even in smaller countries where the format started, like Holland, they saw 52 million page views. Germany reported over 200 million. The demand for unedited reality was just astronomical.
And what were these millions of people watching? It wasn't the high drama edited stuff. They were getting a viewer advisory that warned about, potentially objectionable incidents in language because, as the advisory said, life is full of surprises.
It was that feeling of eavesdropping, like we mentioned. It wasn't just voyeuristic. It felt genuinely dangerous and taboo.
Exactly. You weren't tuning in for a story that was packaged for you. You might tune in and see a boring group meal, sure, but then you'd stick around for hours.
Right.
And watch those same people drift into smaller groups and hear their real feelings about the people who are just sitting at the table with them.
Yes. That shift from passively watching a real-life soap opera on TV to actively eavesdropping and feeling like you were in on their secrets, that was groundbreaking.
Right.
One source even said the LA Daily News declared that web watchers may have revolutionized reality TV.
So why on earth did CBS bother with a second season after all that?
Money, basically, and commitment. That $20 million investment in the rights and the expensive custom-built set, it was wired with 28 cameras and 60 microphones. That was a big incentive not to just walk away.
And Les Moonves, who was the head of CBS then, he pointed out that even with the bad reviews, BB1 still improved our summer ratings and our summer demographics. The last episode actually beat the Olympics in its time slot.
Which is wild.
Yeah, and that little justification was just enough to give the whole concept another, but this time a radically different chance.
So to fix this $20 million disaster, CBS turns to Arnold Shapiro, who is an Oscar-winning documentarian. He was known for really serious stuff like Scared Straight.
Right, and Shapiro, along with his co-producer Allison Grodner, was basically tasked with steering the show in a completely new direction for season 2, away from social observation.
And straight into competitive warfare.
Exactly. The main goal was just get rid of the boring people.
Yeah.
Shapiro wanted a more dynamic cast, filled to the brim with people that would be making good TV. They were looking for players who were highly competitive, who had their eyes on the prize every minute.
They wanted players, not participants. And that drive required a huge seismic format change. The original idea of a collective community vote to banish people.
Gone. Scrapped immediately.
And that was the critical moment.
It was replaced with the head of household, the HOH competition. The winner gets all the power to nominate 2 players for eviction. Then the rest of the house votes one of them out. It completely centralized power and forced individual ambition over any sense of collective good.
Yeah, and the source material draws this really strong line between that format change and American culture. American viewers, who are already so steeped in capitalistic individualism, they preferred this ruthless, cutthroat, zero-sum game.
Even just changing the word from banishment to eviction was seen as an allusion to the cold, hard realities of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? If you fail, you're out and somebody else wins. The social contract was torn up and replaced with a business contract.
And the perfect unapologetic face for this new, ruthless game was Dr. Will Kirby, the winner of Season 2.
Oh, Dr. Will. He became the embodiment of that strategic shift. He just unapologetically declared his philosophy of deceit and manipulation.
He was a character nobody had really seen on TV before. He was cocky, disrespectful, strategically deceitful, and above all, he was successful. His whole philosophy was revolutionary because he just said the quiet part out loud.
He did. We have the exact quote. I've claimed to be dishonest, evil, and backstabbing from the beginning, and they're all now realizing that that's what they are.
He completely cemented the idea that the game rewards that kind of strategic deceit. He won by lying, by manipulating, and he even told the jury in his final plea that if they had a problem with how it all went down, they should take it up with reality.
It just completely shifted the moral calculus of the show. It wasn't about being likable or having integrity anymore. It was about the win. The source notes say he ruthlessly cut the throats of everyone on his way to win, and just forever set the tone for the show's new direction.
But this hunt for outrageous, competitive people for maximum drama, it also brought in a really serious, immediate darkness. The priority was conflict, and safety often felt like an afterthought. We see this with the Justin Seabic controversy.
Right. Seabic, who was briefly in Will's Chilltown alliance, was kicked out of the game pretty early on after he got drunk. The incident involved him repeatedly asking another player, Krista Stegel,
while holding a knife to her throat.
Yeah. Would you get mad if I killed you? I mean, that's an extreme escalation from drama to a genuine, terrifying threat.
It's deeply troubling, and production had to step in immediately and eject him. The consequence, which you can still see on the show today, was that all sharp knives were removed from the house and replaced with plastic ones.
And the timing for CBS was just disastrous. This happened not long after the Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire scandal, where a contestant had a history of domestic violence. So audiences were not feeling particularly charitable about CBS's claim that their background checks had been adequate.
Right, there was a lot of scrutiny on the morality of the whole casting process.
But despite all that, Season 2 proved that this new game-focused format could be profitable. Since the live feeds were this huge but free draw in Season 1, CBS made the calculated move to start charging for them in Season 2. They were basically monetizing the voyeurism they'd stumbled upon.
And it paid off big time. They thought traffic would drop because of the paywall, but the demand for that unfiltered content was so high that nearly 100,000 people paid for the live feeds.
Wow.
It established this massive new revenue stream and proved, as Variety reported, that the webcasting of Big Brother 2 shows net can be profitable. They had successfully turned internet voyeurism into a powerful financial engine.
It's so important to understand, though, that Big Brother wasn't a totally original idea. It was more of a synthesis of a few different cultural and even scientific things happening at the time.
Right. The show's creator, John DeMol, he was just fascinated by the idea of isolating a group of people and just watching what happens under intense pressure.
And the first big piece of that puzzle goes back to the Arizona desert in 1991. Biosphere 2.
Yes. This was that completely closed system research facility. It was meant to replicate Earth's biomes and be totally self-sufficient. And DeMol was just immediately intrigued by creating this little sealed-off world.
And the results of that extreme isolation were so telling. They basically provided the psychological blueprint for the dynamics inside the Big Brother house. Psychologists who study these confined environments have found that small, isolated groups, they almost always suffer a lack of cohesion. They quickly resort to scapegoating or subgrouping to handle the stress.
Which is exactly what happened in Biosphere 2. It proved the theory perfectly. The group started facing declining oxygen and food, and that quickly fueled a full-on factional war among the starving inhabitants.
Yeah, one group wanted to break the bubble to survive, and the other insisted they stick with the experiment. The conflict got so intense and personal that after 10 months, the factions would eat separately. They'd actively avoid eye contact. One of the biospherians said, "We never looked at each other in the face again."
Chilling. So DeMol took that fundamental finding that isolation breeds psychological instability and conflict, and he just built it right into his show's DNA. He knew just locking people together would create drama.
But it needed a competitive edge to work on TV, right?
Right.
It couldn't just be a science experiment. And that element came from Expedition Robinson, which was a Swedish show from 1997. It was basically the precursor to Survivor.
And Expedition Robinson pioneered that essential reality competition mechanism, pitting contestants against each other and making them vote each other out. That's what gave Big Brother the mean twist, the opposing interest, the betrayal. It turned the isolation concept into a ruthless game.
And the final piece of the puzzle, the constant unfiltered surveillance that fed the live feeds, that came from a totally different, very early internet phenomenon, Jenicum.
Right, 1996. A 19-year-old, Jennifer Ringley, sets up a webcam in her bedroom and starts uploading still images every few minutes. She said she was inspired by zoos using webcams to show animals, and she believed her site was just about real life.
And she included nudity and sexual material, but she was really firm that it was not pornography. It was just a genuine documentation of her life.
And the public was fascinated. She got huge attention, even appeared on Letterman. And Letterman's take on it was so prophetic for the reality TV era. He told her, "This will replace television as we know it now. People are lonely and desperate."
Wow. And John DeMol noticed Jenicum and saw clear evidence of a substantial appetite for the kind of voyeurism that this new internet tech allowed. And that led directly to creating the 24/7 multi-camera live feeds for Big Brother. He basically scaled up this tiny independent web stream into a commercial giant.
But Jenna's story was also kind of an early dark warning about the pressures of that constant, unrelenting scrutiny, which is a huge theme in our source material.
It is. She eventually shut down the site just completely exhausted. She said she felt she had to stay in a failing relationship longer than she should have because of the weight of responsibility after broadcasting the start of that romance to millions of people.
And the public scrutiny was just vicious. The press, including the Washington Post, called her an amoral man-trapper. It proved that while the voyeurism was compelling, the consequence for the person being watched was severe.
Even DeMol himself admitted, we have to be very careful because if we do this the wrong way, we're playing God. But in the end, his ambition to mash all these things together, isolation, competition, and surveillance, it won out. and created the phenomenon we're still talking about today.
So, with the show successfully retooled as a competitive game in Season 2, the producers kept tinkering with the rules, and Season 3 introduced one of the most crucial strategic elements ever, the power of veto.
The veto completely changed the game. It dramatically shifted the internal dynamics of power and loyalty. Before the veto, an HOH's nominations were final. Their power was absolute.
Right. But once the veto was introduced, the winner of that competition could save one of the two nominees, which then forced the HOH to name a replacement. And that just creates this cascade of new strategic risks.
Think about it. The veto gives a nominee a chance to save themselves, sure, but it also means the HOH, who already has two enemies for the week, is forced to name a third enemy. And often, it's one of their supposed allies.
It's huge. You can save yourself, you can save an ally, but in the process, you're often sacrificing someone who thought they were totally safe.
And we saw the impact immediately. In the very first week of Season 3, a guy named Marcellus was nominated. Without the veto, he would just been an early footnote. But someone else won the veto, saved him, and it completely changed the week's outcome. It proved the power was essential to the game's complexity.
The veto was also key in allowing for a brand new strategy. The successful long-term secret alliance, which was pioneered by Danielle Reyes and Jason Guy.
Right, because in that small enclosed house, loyalties are usually pretty obvious. You can't hide who you're talking to. Danielle and Jason's big insight was just to keep the alliance a secret, no matter what.
Their strategy was pretty sophisticated. By flying under the radar, they could use a divide and conquer strategy. Jason would work with one faction, befriending the influential Roddy, while Danielle worked the other side, building a strong relationship with the HOH, Lisa.
So they were able to infiltrate the majority. They were like a Trojan horse, the spy telling all their secrets to each other. And they just systematically dismantled the power structure from the inside without anyone ever seeing them as the true threat.
Danielle's game was just a masterclass in strategy, but it was undone by the show's big structural flaw at the time. The jury wasn't sequestered.
Oh, this was a huge problem. So when the evicted players, who become the jury, came back for the finale, they saw all of her diary room sessions where she was mocking them, calling Roddy the devil, and exposing all the lies they had no idea about.
And they were furious. They felt personally betrayed by this unfiltered version of Danielle they were seeing for the first time. So even though they admitted she played the best game,
they chastised her in the finale and refused to vote for her. She lost in a devastating 9-1 vote, which for years was the most lopsided jury vote in the show's history.
Yeah.
The cultural expectation of honesty, or at least the appearance of it, just trumped strategic gameplay. It punished her for being truthful in the diary room.
And that was a crisis for the show. If players couldn't be authentic in the diary room without losing the game, the quality of the show would just plummet. So that led directly to a crucial structural fix in Season 4, the creation of the jury house.
This was a total operational necessity to protect the game's strategic integrity. From then on, the last 7 evicted players are sequestered, cut off from the outside world. And crucially, they're only allowed to see selected portions of the show and nothing from the diary room.
So the producers basically made a choice. They sacrificed the jury's full context of the game to make sure contestants could keep being unfiltered, ruthless strategists without fear of that kind of personal reprisal. And that decision was fundamental to the game's long-term viability.
But even with that fix, Season 4 saw Shapiro continuing to tinker, driven by this constant fear of losing the audience's interest. And it led to some twists that just felt desperate.
Yeah, BB4 was the X factor, where they brought in players' exes. It really felt like they were trying to turn the show into a relationship drama factory, like Temptation Island or something.
But the players adapted pretty quickly. They formed the Elite Eight Alliance among the original players to just systematically eliminate all 5 X's. It proved that strategy can often overcome manufactured drama.
But Shapiro wasn't done. BB5 was Project DNA, Do Not Assume, which featured the incredible twin twist with Adria and Natalie secretly swapping places for 5 weeks.
That was an amazing logistical feat of subterfuge. It functionally gave their alliance the power of 16 people in the house. The audience got super invested in just the operational success of the lie.
But that same twist, Project DNA, also had one of the darkest, most reckless moments in the show's history. The half-sibling twist with Jennifer Nokomis, Deadman, and Michael Cowboy Ellis.
This one is hard to talk about. The producers revealed this devastating personal news to them that they were secretly half-siblings while they were totally isolated in the house, unable to contact their family or process this immense trauma.
The emotional pressure cooker just became too much for Nokomis, and she was ultimately betrayed by her newfound brother late in the game, and she had this visceral meltdown on the live feeds, screaming at the cameras.
Yeah, she screamed, "I'm only in this game because I have a brother I never knew I had. I hope you love this. I hope you like this for your fucking reality TV show because this is fucking real, Big Brother. I hope you got that, you fucking sadistic assholes."
It's just a chilling quote. And that moment was so raw and painful that even Hamster Watch, a really prominent live feed commentator, considered shutting down her whole site. She recognized the uncomfortable truth that we do wait for stuff like this to happen, and that's kind of sick.
It really highlights the profound moral tightrope that both the audience and the production are walking when you have a show that actively seeks out and exploits these private, painful moments for entertainment.
So season 6, which fans often call Big Brother's Red Wedding, is a perfect case study in how fan investment can get super intense and how that leads to online toxicity.
Yeah. The season was just so cleanly divided. It gave the audience a clear hero in Kaysar, who was this Iraqi-American player who said he wanted to bring the human touch to the war. And you had a defined villain in Cappy, who ran the powerful Friendship Alliance, which fans immediately branded the Nerd Herd.
And that division just perfectly shows the power of the feeds to generate immediate, passionate fandom. Fans were using real-time tracking sites like Joker's updates to follow the game minute by minute. And the exhilaration of seeing Kaysar win HOH and deliver a crushing blow to the other side, getting Cappy evicted, was just, it was deeply satisfying for the audience.
The sources describe it as this profound, vicarious experience. For a lot of viewers, watching Kaysar overcome this alliance that had systematically excluded him felt like watching the hero overcome every bully who had been cruel to you in your life.
And that deep emotional projection is what fuels that intense parasocial relationship between the audience and the players.
But with that extreme investment comes extreme toxicity. Once players leave the house, they face this onslaught of people who feel like they know them, demanding to know why they bought a certain car, why they're still friends with a certain person. The audience, having watched 2047, believes they have this complete, total understanding of the person on screen.
And the really dark side of that is laid bare in what happened to Jennifer Vasquez, the player who betrayed Kaysar. The hatred she received was intense, immediate, and tragically really long-lasting.
There was a dedicated hate site, JenVasquezSucks.com, where users celebrated that she lost her job after anonymous letters were sent to her employer detailing her behavior in the house.
That is just an astonishing real-world consequence for being on a game show, and the cruelty didn't stop. 20 years later, a reunion brought a whole new wave of hate. She saw a quote online that said, "If I could bomb her twice and it be effective, I would do it." It's terrifying. It just showcases the enduring nature of the damage caused by this parasocial hatred that just flourishes in an environment where temporary actions are instantly recorded and digitally memorialized forever.
And it forces you to look at the disconnect because the players themselves often don't grasp how severe the audience reaction is.
Right. A contestant named James wore a t-shirt that said, "America hates you, April," because a fan made it for him. And he admitted he thought it was just a joke. He didn't realize that this Orwellian experiment was fueling genuine, job-losing, potentially dangerous hatred outside the house.
It's just a staggering gap between the player's context and the audience's extreme investment. It really makes you question the whole ethical framework of the medium. When you have that much unfiltered access, does it create a sense of ownership over a person you're watching?
The only thing protecting the players from that kind of negative perception is the editing. But that protection creates this massive internal conflict because the producers are essentially creating two realities. Right. There's one reality on the raw live feeds for the hardcore paying fans, and then there's the highly controlled, carefully crafted TV edit for the masses.
And this manipulation allowed producers to protect their fan favorites and minimize controversy, even when the behavior on the feeds was, frankly, shocking or abusive. A perfect and extremely dark example of this is Evil Dick Donato from Season 8.
Yes. On the live feeds, Evil Dick was just openly antagonistic, misogynistic, abrasive, and verbally abusive. He made specific threats of violence. The National Organization for Women publicly called for his removal, citing threats like, "I'm going to sodomize her until she bleeds to death."
I mean, just horrific stuff. And another contestant, Amber, was making homophobic remarks.
Yeah.
Yet the TV edit it minimized all of this drastically.
And you have to analyze the editorial choice there. The show portrayed him as abrasive, sure, but ultimately redeemable. They'd show him in the diary room in tears because he just wants to make things right with his daughter, or they'd frame his antics as some strategic move to save his daughter.
And this manipulation worked. It led him to become the audience favorite, especially for the general public who only saw the TV edit.
And the situation was compounded by that notorious America's Player twist.
Right. Superfan Eric Stein was forced by his contract to follow America's votes. And because the TV edit protected and favored Evil Dick, the general audience voted to protect him, which forced Eric to work in a way that was directly detrimental to his own game by keeping his biggest enemy, Dick, in the house. The edit directly dictated the fate of the game.
And this manipulation was a recurring systemic problem. It was designed to protect lucrative fan favorites. For instance, Jeff Schroeder, who was a superstar fan favorite, was caught on the feeds in both season 11 and season 13 making homophobic slurs.
Liberally, including the F slur multiple times in season 11 and then ranting about gay people in season 13.
And crucially, despite all those instances, the source material confirms none of this made the edit.
Not a second of it. So because Jeff was only portrayed as a superstar and a true stand-up guy, America rewarded him with the powerful coup d'etat power in season 11, which completely changed the direction of the game and ultimately led to his showmance, Jordan, winning the whole season.
It just shows how editorial control can directly influence audience votes and, the outcome of the entire game.
The tide started to turn, though, in season 15. The feeds had become so widely tracked and documented by fans online that the overt racism from contestants like Aaron Grise and Gina Marie Zimmerman was just impossible to contain or suppress.
Yeah, the show was forced to be more transparent than any other reality show about the bigotry that was happening in the house.
Producers admitted they usually avoided putting hateful things out there, but they claimed they had a launching pad to be able to tell this story this time because other contestants were actively speaking out against it.
And that's what finally led to the broadcast of the infamous bed flipping incident, where the show was really forced to confront the social dynamics it had created.
Candace Stewart, who was the only black woman in the house at the time, walked into a room to find her mattress flipped and her belongings scattered in this targeted act of disrespect. And then Gina Marie escalated the whole conflict with that harrowing quote, "You want the black to come out."
It's just awful. And another contestant, Howie Overby, he stepped in and physically removed Candace from the confrontation. And his analysis of that moment was just chilling, and it went right to the heart of the show's systemic flaws. He said, "We're not playing a game where we can do that."
And Candace just broke down, feeling that heavy burden of representation, saying she was reminded of all this stuff that we know that goes on. That segment finally gave the general TV audience a glimpse of what it might be like to be an actual minority in the house. A crucial narrative the show had successfully suppressed for years through its editing.
So after all that initial chaos and strategic experimentation, the landscape of Big Brother started to shift dramatically. The game went from being the story of the underdog overcoming the odds to one of just consolidating power and establishing majority dominance.
And this was primarily driven by superfans who would study the show's entire evolution.
This profound strategic shift really started with Matt Hoffman and his alliance, the Brigade, in season 12. Matt, a self-proclaimed Mensa member, saw the game as a system he could manipulate without cheating.
And the Brigade, a secret four-person bro alliance, achieved what no other large alliance had before. They successfully steamrolled the entire season, taking all 4 spots in the final 4.
Their big innovation was adapting the secret alliance strategy, but for the majority. So here's how it worked. Each of the 4 core members was responsible for linking up with one person outside the alliance, their +1.
So if a core member was nominated, they could rely on the full force of their alliance, plus the loyalty of 4 outside voters who had no idea the core 4 were even aligned.
It meant their secret alliance of 4 could functionally operate as a secret alliance of 8. It doubled their influence without the instability and risk of a big, leaky alliance where secrets always get out.
Matt, the brains, basically handed the keys to the strategic kingdom over to the popular kids, and a new kind of player emerged. The tools, once used by outsiders like Danielle and Jason, were now being used by the majority to just crush any opposition. For the next decade, nearly every winner was a superfan who started in the majority.
But the true masterclass in strategic maneuvering came from Dan Giesling in seasons 10 and 14.
Oh, Dan. He was the ultimate product of Big Brother analysis. He spent 4 years preparing. He created a fake political persona for casting this aggressive guy who would rant about moving out of the country if a certain candidate won, only to drop that persona the second he entered the house and become this quiet, reserved school teacher.
His game was all about layers and theatricality. He just transitioned effortlessly between roles. Loyal non-player, then a traitor, then a weak, easily manipulated player when he needed to be.
And his most legendary move came in season 14, where he was dead in the water against his closest ally, Danielle, which led him to orchestrate the famous Big Brother funeral.
This was pure, calculated performance for the jury. While he was on the eviction block, he dressed in all black, gave this tearful self-eulogy, made amends with everyone. But then, in a twist of the dagger, he turned to Danielle, his partner, and said, "In this game, you'll never earn my trust back. You know what you did, and in this game, you're dead to me."
It was just theatrical genius.
Yeah.
He used performative vulnerability to completely disarm his opponents. He successfully convinced the jury he was playing the hardest game possible, even lying in his finale speech about his infamous replacement nominee roulette move.
Yeah, he claimed it was a strategy to make the jury hate him, so Memphis would have to take him to the end. But he later admitted it was just revenge against another player for betraying his friend. He just poured rhetoric over it and a little BS to make it seem like there was strategy.
And it proves that controlling the narrative in that final hour is often more important than the actual truth.
Yeah.
His game was so paradoxically successful that his opponents literally could not believe he was a real player.
And this era of strategic dominance was perfected by Derek Levasseur, the former undercover detective in season 16. Derek created the ultimate onion alliance structure, just leveraging his professional background in strategy and secrecy.
Right. He layered his alliances for maximum safety and influence. You had the bomb squad, which was 8 people.
Then the detonators, the 5 core players.
And finally the hitmen, which was his final 2 with Cody, and they exploited the new Battle of the Block twist, which is critical to understanding their flawless dominance.
It is. The Battle of the Block twist forced the show to have 2 HOHs each week, each nominating 2 players. And if one HOH's nominees won the competition, that HOH was dethroned.
Which effectively gave the Majority Alliance 2 chances at safety every single week, and it cut the chances for the Minority Alliance in half. It just centralized power dramatically. Derek's alliance controlled both HOHs almost every week, ensuring their safety and just defining the era as one where underdogs were strategically suffocated.
The rise of that majority dominance, which was fueled by superfans and enabled by these exploitable twists, it really exacerbated a deep-seated structural issue within the show, the diversity problem.
Yeah, data and studies confirmed that any given black player was underperforming in the game compared to a white player. By season 21, no black player had placed in the top half of a season for 8 consecutive years.
It's a staggering statistic, and that structural issue imposed this heavy weight of representation on black players. You can see this painfully in Jamaica's experience in season 8.
Right. She got into a minor disagreement with Evil Dick about her comments on starving children in Africa. And Jamaica, who was the only black person in the house, eventually apologized to Evil Dick in tears for making him feel uncomfortable.
She felt this immense burden of needing to be mindful of how I'm portraying myself because she felt like she was representing her entire race. And it forced her to adhere to these rules that may appear noble but that truly benefit only those already in positions of power, even if it meant sacrificing her own comfort and authenticity.
This systemic failure, the inability of black players to win or even succeed due to these built-in structural disadvantages and implicit bias, led directly to the most powerful and meaningful alliance in the show's history, the Cookout in season 23.
This alliance of 6 black players was masterminded by Tiffany Mitchell, who was the oldest player in the house that season. And they had one collective mission: guarantee the first black winner in 23 seasons. Tiffany recognized that black people have to stick together to survive, and that their goal was to shatter the control that has been used to keep us controlled.
And their operational strategy was just brilliance born of necessity. Each of the 6 members needed a +1 White House guest to ensure the alliance was never nominated together. This required an immense sacrifice of their individual games for the collective good.
And it was driven by the knowledge that in previous seasons, alliances of black players were always quickly broken up out of fear of their unity by the white majority. The Cookout successfully played the same majority game as the Brigade, but for the express purpose of systemic correction.
Adding to all of this was the competition skew that favored athletes. The challenges had shifted dramatically from the more equitable carnival games of the early years to these intense physical competitions.
Oh yeah. The stats are undeniable. Modern era winners like Cody, Jackson, and Casey were all winning 7 or 8 competitions in their seasons. So the majority alliances who already had the numbers could just hoard all the power by winning comps, making the social game almost impossible for outsiders or anyone less physically inclined.
And this whole strategic and systemic context brings us to Taylor Hale in season 24. Her journey touched on every single structural issue we've discussed. She was scapegoated and ostracized from the very beginning, which is rooted in that psychological phenomenon we saw in Biosphere 2. She was supposed to be the first one evicted.
And her resilience was immediately tested during that explosive Daniel blow-up. Daniel publicly attacked her, accusing her of exploiting another contestant's mental health issues, a completely unfounded accusation that Taylor was totally oblivious to.
But that public moral outrage against Taylor was so over the top and so unfair that it inadvertently helped her. It got her genuine sympathy and support from other players who saw the injustice of it all.
So, despite losing key competitions late in the game, Taylor finds herself in the final 2. And her ultimate game-changing strategy was her winning speech to the jury.
She didn't rely on the traditional metrics. She challenged them to abandon the established criteria of competition wins and big moves.
She demanded they look past all the manipulation and see her as a symbol of resiliency and progress, delivering that powerful final line. I am not a shield, I am a sword. I am not a victim, I am a victor.
And that rhetoric was so powerful and so timely that it successfully changed the operational rules of the game in that specific moment. It allowed her to win, despite the deck being heavily stacked against her traditional metrics of success.
So to bring this all full circle, we have to go back to the sheer scale of the operation. 90-plus cameras, 247 feeds, that constant, intense scrutiny. And Taylor Hale, who had to overcome being falsely accused and ostracized, she had this really profound understanding of the value of that extreme voyeurism after the game.
Yeah, she said, "My stomach churns when I think about living in that house without 247 live feeds." For her, the feeds are vital for accountability and for justice. She said, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Live feeds are the sun."
So while the feeds are intrusive and often dangerous, they provide this necessary, unedited counter-narrative against the producer's manipulative editing. They offer protection to people who are unfairly targeted.
And this leads us back to that core question of the show's value and its function as a mirror. Dr. Will Kirby's infamous final sentiment just rings so true across 2 decades. If you're not happy with this show, maybe you're not happy with reality.
Right. Big Brother functions as a funhouse of mirrors. It reflects, it contorts, it exaggerates our own social flaws, but its incredible complexity proves there's always more to learn.
And the strategies developed in that house, the secrecy, the floating, consolidating power, they often mirror real life. This is high-stakes social engineering. One of the source authors even talked about mediating a feuding film crew and comparing it to being a floater, trying to keep both sides happy without committing to either one. He was using tactics born directly from the Big Brother house.
The show is so sticky because we are supposed to relate to it. No other reality show highlights a person's personal idiosyncrasies, their snoring, how they eat, how they interact at 3 a.m. like Big Brother does.
The success of the players, from Dr. Will's deceit to Derek's perfect control, it provides this roadmap for how power is achieved and maintained in isolation.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought. If the core strategies required for success in the Big Brother house secrecy, manipulation, and the consolidation of power among the most dominant are simply reflections of our own culture and corporate reality, should we, the viewers, be questioning the morality of the game itself, or the reality that it so ruthlessly reflects?
That's something to mull over the next time you hear a whispered conversation on the live feeds.